It boggles me that we have all these conversations about female empowerment, particularly in the workplace, like corporate empowerment for women, and we don't talk about sexuality. Our sexuality is the source of our oppression, but the actual truth is that it's the source of our power. And it's got nothing to do with how we interact with other people. It's got everything to do with how we interact with ourselves, with our own bodies, with our own life force energy. For a woman to be fully grounded in her own sexuality and in her own erotic power, and to be carrying herself through the world with the magnetism that results from that, allowing herself to shine and to be seen, I think that's about as empowering as it gets. I'm Madeline Eliza, leader, writer, performer, and founder of Bhakti Lab, an incubator for soul-led entrepreneurs. Join me to explore the edgy intersection of the brain and the body, feminine and masculine, ancient and modern, sensual and spiritual, to help you liberate your personal power and turn your biggest, boldest visions into reality. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about the interplay between sex and power, especially as it relates to female leaders. So it boggles me that we have all these conversations about female empowerment, particularly in the workplace, like corporate empowerment for women, and we don't talk about sexuality because it's an essential part of our power as women. And it's got nothing to do with how we interact with other people. It's got everything to do with how we interact with ourselves, with our own bodies, with our own life force energy, and how we can better harness and maximize our own personal power so that we can go out and have our maximum impact on the world. I've talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, but I really want to pull it apart today. I want to start by looking at the sex wars of the 1980s, which you may not have heard of. It's such a fabulous term, the feminist sex wars. And this is where second wave feminism really split into two different ideological camps. And it then kind of evolved into third wave feminism, which was more about raunch culture. And that's kind of continued on till today. There's these opposing positions on how women should navigate our bodies and our sexuality. And I think it's very relevant for women who want to lead, and especially women who are wanting to lead in organizations and teams alongside strong and powerful men. Because I have led alongside men when I've been disconnected from my own embodied power, and I've led alongside men when I am fully empowered and tapped into my life force. And it is like chalk and cheese, my experience. And when you're tapped in and plugged in and turned on to your own power, we enter this space of ease and playfulness as a leader that if we're not doing that, it's just totally inaccessible to us. So I want to just spend some time pulling all of this apart. And I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we embody leading in this way and demonstrate what is possible for women who want to lead, I hope that this whole concept will come out of the shadows and into the light and become more normalized, and hopefully turn more women on to the idea of really connecting with their own personal power and then going forth into their homes and their workplaces and to do whatever it is that you came here to do in the world, from this very bold, playful, deeply feminine space. So that it feels like my mission in life to spread this word. So I want to just pull it apart a little bit more in this episode. And I will add as a preface, I'm recording this at the beginning of January 2025. And my intention for 2024 was to stop hiding. And creating this podcast has been integral in that approach of stopping hiding and voicing everything that was going unvoiced for me, and standing in the light of my own power, which I'd kind of hidden from previously, and allowing myself to be fully seen. And that's meant sharing my poetry, sharing my musical expression. I actually finished the year, I played in a devotional music concert on New Year's Eve. So as the clock ticked over from 2024 to 2025, I had the beautiful opportunity to be singing devotional music on stage in a very present, God-connected, heartfelt space alongside my beautiful friend Shunya and his band. And it was such an incredible experience, and it felt like such a perfectly poetic way to end the year that I had started with the intention of, I'm going to stop hiding this year. And I've done so much work to peel these layers off and to allow the fullness of my expression and power and light as a woman to be seen. And it has been a massive leap of faith, because I had a feeling that if I did that, I would end up in a space of much greater alignment and much greater empowerment. But there was also a risk that I would completely blow up my corporate kind of world in doing that. And I will talk more about this at the end of the episode, but I'm now seeing the proof in the pudding as I've put together my new business offering, which I'll talk more about in this episode. But as I'm out there in the marketplace talking to people and taking on clients and having calls with very corporately minded men, who I would have thought, oh, what are they going to think about my whole shtick? Is it too out there? No, I'm getting met with just so much respect and reverence. And it's been a very beautiful experience. And so I want to share a bit more about that, hopefully to encourage you to stop hiding too. Because the more of us that can stand fully in our truth and our light, even though it feels scary and uncomfortable, we're just going to make the world a better place. And you'll have a much more empowered experience of yourself too. So I'll share more about that at the end. I want to start by the working title of this episode is Sex and Power. I may end up calling it something else. But if we look at relations between men and women, which is the area that I'm interested in working in and playing with, particularly how men and women interact in the workplace. And that's because of my own experience of kind of climbing the corporate ladder, working alongside men mostly. Sex is at the intersection of all male-female relations. Like, it's there, even if we're not talking about it, even if we're not, it's not front and center, it's very present. And really, this is where patriarchy has evolved from, and why women have been confined and contained, is because of our amazingly fertile bodies and the power that comes via paternity, and men wanting to make sure that they had control of paternity so that they had control of legacy and offspring and empire building. That's where patriarchy comes from. That's why women are suppressed and controlled, because of this incredible power that our bodies have. That's the source of the oppression, is our power. And a lot of us, I know a lot of women, even women that I speak to, and I know this is a broader cultural issue as well, a lot of women have experienced sexual violence or other forms of violence from men in their lives. A lot of women have experienced violations, large and small. There's a continuum here, obviously, but I think almost every woman has experienced some form of sexual harassment or violation of some aspect of her being. And so if we have this personal experience, and we live in a culture that does quite a lot of victim blaming, so it's very easy to internalize a message that if only I hadn't smiled at him, if only I hadn't been in that place at that time, if only I hadn't had that drink, if only I hadn't worn that outfit, if only I hadn't shone so brightly, this wouldn't have happened. And so and this is a sensitive topic, I should put a warning at the start of this episode. If you've had those experiences, then it's logical to shrink and to hide, because it hasn't been safe in the past for you to shine your light. And even if you haven't had, I think, as I said, most women have experienced some form of harassment or violation of some type. But even if you haven't had major sexual trauma in your life, your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother might have been burnt at the stake or beaten alive, or, persecuted and oppressed and punished for her feminine gifts, her intuition, her power, whatever. There's this epigenetic trend that gets passed down the generations, where we learn from our mothers, who have learned from their mothers, who have learned from their mothers, to shrink, to hide, to shroud ourselves in shame, to play small, to play it safe. Don't stick your head out and shine, because you might get hurt, right? Like, that runs so deep for most of us as women, and there's a big process in unraveling those layers. Anyway, I've talked about this in previous episodes. I don't want to go over and over it, but our sexuality and our fecundity is the source. It's been the source of our oppression, but it's the actual truth is that it's the source of our power. And we've learned to hide from it. We've learned to shrink from it, a lot of us, most of us. And I think there's a bold turning of the tables in actually fully owning it and standing in it, and standing in it in front of powerful men who we might work with. And it's not about what we're saying or what we're doing. It's about how we're being, this unapologetic, fully expressed, fierce, wild feminine energy, and the magnetism that you generate when you conduct yourself in that way. And it's just standing in it and feeling them feel it. And as I said, the beautiful thing that I'm experiencing now is feeling the respect and the reverence that you get from powerful men when you stand in your own power as a woman, because your power is different from theirs. It's kind of socially acceptable for men to wield their sexuality in the workplace. The dick swinging and the pissing contest and the chest beating and all these phrases that we use. And I love being around men and masculine energy, by the way. I don't say this with any derision or contempt. Like, this is part of beautiful range of masculine expression, and there's nothing wrong with it unless it tips into abusive. But that is an expression of male sexuality, this penetrative, strong, like, I am here and I'm going to make myself known. That's a sexual expression of the masculine, and that's kind of normal in the corporate world. That's what it runs on. But for a woman to fully own her sexual expression is seen as that would be embarrassing, that would be unprofessional. And again, I'm not talking about going to work dressed in really suggestive, revealing clothes or having any type of below board interactions with anyone. It's not about that, but it's like a sinking back and a comfort and an ease with your own embodied power. And it generates this magnetism. Like, you think if Beyonce walked into a room full of bros, they're going to make space for her, because she's so completely unapologetic and empowered in her own body, and they can't compete with it. Like, it's a different language of power than the language that the bros are speaking. They can't compete. They can't touch it. They can't take it. It's within her. So I use that as a helpful image. When we feel like, oh my God, I could never just own my power in that way, I'm too scared it would be seen as unprofessional. Well, yeah, think of Beyonce walking into a room full of corporate bros and watch them make space. Because when a woman completely owns her power, powerful men can feel it and they respect it, in my experience anyway. This is my philosophy of embodied feminine power. I'm not saying it's the way, but it's a way that I'm interested in exploring and driving a wedge in and seeing what happens if more of us conduct ourselves in this way, because I have a feeling that the results would be pretty strong. And it can be triggering because we've been taught to hide and suppress it. But when you practice sinking back into this space, and it's about eradicating shame and connecting to your sexuality and your expression, your creative expression, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, connecting to your heart, making space for your desires, not kind of cutting off the connection with any part of yourself. These are all the practices that you can do. And then it's just how you be in the world that creates this magnetism and this mystique. And again, I'm not sharing this because I think I've got some like magical secret that nobody else has. It's been a lot of work and a lot of time for me to land in this place of empowerment in my own body. And I'm now seeing the results of it. And the results are really empowering and really playful and easeful and fun. Like, it's a really fun way of operating with men compared to how I used to wield power alongside men that I was working with, which was like so much striving and trying to speak that language of masculine power, not realizing that my language of power was completely different. And I talked about Beyonce, just to give you another couple of examples. My background is as an actress, so I know this is not a very corporate example, but I believe the reason why Marilyn Monroe is so enduring is because she was connected to this it's like this well of light inside your body as a woman, and her radiance and her magnetism is so obvious when you watch her on screen. And I think and she's beautiful, of course, but the secret to her icon status as a sex symbol and as an enduring cultural reference point is this magnetism and this connection to her own erotic power. And to give you a more recent example, if you look at the actress Sydney Sweeney, who I think her background was as a porn actress actually, and she's crossed over into the mainstream Hollywood, and she's a megastar. And when you watch her on screen, she is so magnetic and so compelling. And it's not what she's doing, it's how she's being. And it's this connection to her own erotic power and this sort of open-heartedness and vulnerability it's a magnet. It draws you right in to her space and to her world. And that is the mystique that we carry as women. And if you're not actively feeding that and cultivating it and using it to your advantage, then it's like you've got this amazing tool in your tool belt that you just never take out. Like, what a waste. And when you learn to use it powerfully, it can change your life. So that's why I'm here talking about these today. I wanted to speak a little bit about the feminist sex wars. I just love that term. So we had first wave feminism was the suffragettes around 1900. Second wave feminism started in the 60s, and this was like the housewives wanting to be more than housewives. This is a very reductive overview. Second wave feminism then continued. In the 80s, we found ourselves in the sex wars, where the very active kind of front and center feminists split into two camps. And some were arguing against pornography, BDSM, arguing that women shouldn't make themselves into sex objects and that sex was disempowering for women. And some major writers here include Andrea Dworkin, who wrote a book called Pornography, Men Possessing Women, All Against Pornography. There's another book written by Ariel Levy in 2005. I think that book was published, called Female Chauvinist Pigs, which was a response to raunch culture, which then kind of evolved in the 90s. That was the start of third wave feminism in the 1990s, where we had raunch culture and a lot more focus on individual expression. Anyway, so the sex wars had this one camp who was saying pornography is bad, BDSM is bad, this is exploiting women, women shouldn't make themselves into sex objects, the male gaze is bad, da 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 da. And then on the other hand, you had the sex positive feminists, women like Gail Rubin, Wendy McElroy, and Ellen Willis, arguing that actually freedom of sexual expression is an essential part of feminism. And there's different viewpoints here. Some were arguing that pornography is actually empowering for women. There's a whole conversation around BDSM as part of this that I think is really interesting. And I think, again, I take umbrage with this very righteous, hysterical kind of neoliberal feminism thing. Oh my God, masculine energy is so toxic. Even the book Men Possessing Women, like, trying to word this carefully, but as a very feminine identified woman, if I'm in an intimate relationship with a man, I want to be possessed by him. Like, I think BDSM and especially submissiveness for women, like this whole experience of surrender and opening and vulnerability and these beautiful expressions of feminine love and intimacy flow so perfectly into a BDSM scenario. And if we're on our soapbox self-righteously saying that's bad, women shouldn't do that, well, it kind of goes against what our nature yearns for. And I'm not saying that everybody wants to be submissive, but I think there's aspects of truth in the ways that men and women relate with each other that's based on our biology. And we're not the same. And yeah, I have an issue with this stream of feminism that says women and men are the same and we should be out like hustling in the corporate world just like a man, and that men need to put their masculinity away and it's toxic, and BDSM and pornography is completely bad, and like we just shouldn't, I don't know, like should we not even talk about sex? I'm being reductive, but you get the picture. So there's the sex positive feminists and then the feminists who are against sex. And It's really interesting, especially female chauvinist pigs, is really arguing that with raunch culture and women doing these performative displays of sexuality, which is internalizing the male gaze. There's another writer, Laura Mulvey, I've got a quote here. She's a film theorist who says female bodies are positioned as to be looked at, and these bodies are viewed from a masculinized subject position, like this whole uproar about the male gaze. Again, I think this partly goes against, and I don't think that women should be treated as sex objects. I don't think that we should objectify ourselves. I don't think that performative displays of sexuality help anyone. That's not empowering if it's not coming from a place of true embodied empowerment within yourself. I don't think that casual sex is empowering, actually, and that might be controversial to say that, but I don't think women, I don't think we're built, our bodies and our souls are built for that to be an empowering experience. That's my personal opinion. But this idea that female bodies are positioned to be looked at and male bodies, it's about the male gaze. There's something in that where one of the key traits of the feminine is this radiance and this expressiveness. And to bring in the Tantra concepts of Shiva, Shakti. Shakti is the experience and Shiva is the experiencer. Like he is the point of consciousness. And there's something quite beautiful in that. There's something quite beautiful as a woman in feeling beautiful and being witnessed and admired and adored by the man that you love. I don't think we need to make that a bad thing either. And of course, this is a continuum and there's shades of grey, but I don't think that demonizing the male gaze 100% as if it's this black and white thing is very helpful, because actually the male gaze, when it's a gaze of respect and reverence and wonder, can be a very beautiful thing to receive as a woman. And I think we're wired to seek it. We're wired to want to adorn. I have a 4-year-old daughter. Yesterday she made me paint her nails and curl her hair before she would go to her dad's house because I was painting my nails and curling my hair, and she wants to adorn herself and she wants to feel beautiful. And I wrestled with that for a while thinking, oh, maybe, it's bad. Little girls shouldn't even be like thinking about their appearance. And of course, I don't always talk about her appearance, but I believe there is an inherent female yearning to adorn ourselves and to be admired and to be witnessed and to be experienced. We want to be experienced in the fullness of our expression. This is Shiva Shakti stuff. It's like fundamental. So yeah, some thoughts on the male gaze. And I can see the arguments of this female chauvinist pigs that if we're internalizing that male gaze and objectifying ourselves and putting on these performative displays in a way that's not authentic or empowering, or where we're just going through the motions and doing what we think we need to do to be a sex object, that's not empowering for anyone. But for a woman to be fully grounded in her own sexuality and in her own erotic power, and to be carrying herself through the world with the magnetism that results from that, allowing herself to shine and to be seen in her shining glory, I think that's about as empowering as it gets. And it's honoring of ourselves as women, because we are different from men. We have different strengths. We have different power source. It's a whole different language. And I'm interested in teasing out those differences so that you can go into your workplace plugged into your feminine mystique and magnetism and experience the results of letting that radiate outwards and see what comes to you and see how men relate to you when you're just unapologetically standing in it, because they do relate to you differently, because the power is different from what they have. I'm going to leave it there for today. This is my encouragement to just, peel back the layers, connect to your own erotic power, and let it radiate out of you. Like, wear it like a skin. I think this is the future of female empowerment and feminine leadership and embodied feminine leadership. And I'm really excited to be contributing to this conversation in whatever small way I'm contributing. If you want to go deeper into this work, I'm just thinking what I can offer you. I do have a free training called Hollow to Whole. It's an ebook really unpacking the traits of the distorted feminine. There's this archetype called the Hollow Queen, where we're trying to fill ourselves up from the outside. And a really big part of my embodiment practice has been learning about this archetype and making sure I'm filling myself up from the inside. So if you would like to learn more about that, you'll find all the links in the show notes or on my website, madelineeliza.com. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. If you have any feedback or if this has sparked any ideas for you, please reach out to me. I'd love to continue the conversation. See you next time. Have a beautiful day.